somebody says, how to de-escalate hostility in conversations. That is, if I'm responding to a post containing an ad hominem along with legit arguments against materialism, should I point out the ad hom?
Yes.
Well, this is a good question.
Okay.
There are times, like, for example, when people will try to goad me. This is very rare, but it's real obvious when people are trying to goad you, right? Like when somebody's responding to people and they're using honey and sweetheart every time they respond to a woman on the list, and they don't do that to anybody else. It's like clearly they're trying to get a rise out of the women on the list. And so what I tend to do is I just ignore that. I don't even call it out. It's like to me, it's like childish and ridiculous. And I'm going to look at what they're saying.
You're feeding the troll.
And I just address their points, and I just keep addressing their points, and I keep just disregard. It's like ignoring a child having a tantrum, right? If you pay attention to it, then it's just going to keep going on, or you're going to get into a power struggle with the child. And so the best thing to do is just let them have their tantrum, they'll get it out of their system, and then they can calm down and come back when they're
Let me give a little
normal.
different answer. I think I've been in those sorts of situations, and at some point you may just have to say, we can't have an honest conversation here.
Well, but what he's saying is that there are good arguments mixed in.
Oh, I see.
So, but what I was going to also say, though, is, so for example, an ad hominem usually is going to revolve around an actual reasoning error, which is a little different than just being sexist asshat, right? So if they're saying something that's an ad hominem, like, and this scientist did this horrible thing, and so why would you believe his information? Throw all that out. I think it's fair. I wouldn't do the let me spot the fallacy thing. I wouldn't do the like, oh, that's an ad hominem and you're just arguing unreasonably. And I wouldn't go all that route. I would just simply address it on a reasonable basis and say, well, yeah, it's true. This scientist did do blah, blah, blah. But I don't see how that really invalidates their results.
What I'm hearing here is that the person who's doing the arguing is being attacked. That's what I'm hearing from this.
And if that's the case, it's fair to say, like if somebody says to me, you can't understand this thing because you're a woman, right? And I can write back and I can say, well, I understand that you may have a different experience socially and like have different influences and stuff like that, but at the same time, but at the same time, I'm trying to understand here and I am engaging in this dialogue. And so here I'm trying to ask legitimate questions. And so if you would address me and give me the benefit of the doubt here that maybe I can understand more than you give me credit for, if you can bear with me and explain it in a way that I can understand and let me ask questions, maybe I can learn this, right? So I think it's fair to sort of address it, but I wouldn't address it just as sort of like a counter thing. I would literally say, this doesn't impact that, and so I think we can move on with this. Because I don't really see how you're connecting these two things. I don't see how you're connecting this negative thing with my inability to do this, or why that would make this invalid. Can you explain the connection there? And if not, can we just drop that, aspect of it? I think that if you want to keep the conversation going, I would address it only insofar as it needs to be addressed. And if it's something that can be ignored, I would ignore it. If it's just the person being an asshat, just blow by it and answer their questions and just keep ignoring the.
And you don't have to interact. You don't have to interact with people that are attacking you.
You don't. No, you totally don't. That's your choice. 100% your choice. I just find that for me, it's just if I know the person's just trying to be a dork, I will tend to just focus on the arguments and just say, okay, that's just fluff. That's the noise, and I just go on with the arguments. But if it is something where they're legitimately confused. I mean, these fallacies do legitimately confuse people sometimes.
Yep.
So if you think that they maybe are making a connection that shouldn't be made, like saying that these points are not valid because this person is bad for some reason, it's fair to just sort of say, I think a person who does this can also be reasonable on this front.
Yep.
Okay. And Don says, no, you just let him have it. Tell him, stop being an asshat. Okay.
Well, you have to choose your battles at the end of the day. There's not enough time to address all the wrong in the world.
Yeah, I think if it's just a few, and the other thing too, though, is that if it's an argument other people are observing. So if the person if you're having this conversation where other people can observe it, sometimes there's a whole benefit to that, to putting up with it in that context, which is what I generally am dealing with, right? So if I'm responding to somebody, I tend to be doing the responses thinking in my head, I want other people to see the reasoning behind these responses. I don't care about the ad hominem. I don't care about the person. I don't care about the honey and the sweetheart. And it's like, it doesn't matter. The important thing to me is to show the people on this thread what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
And to use this person as a tool to express it. And so if you look at it kind of from that perspective and say, I'm going to use them as the foil, right? They're a foil for me to make my points. That kind of tends to, I think, help. And the more of a jerk they are to you on the thread, the better you're going to look. Because there's like an opposite effect of ad hominem, where if somebody's being a complete jerk during the conversation, people tend to sort of empathize with the person who's being treated like a jerk and taking the high road. And it doesn't sometimes even matter if you're...
Take the high road. That's a good plan.
Be the best.
Okay.